Hello, welcome back to the Marnie on the Move podcast. I'm your host, Marnie Salop. Today on the Marnie on the Move podcast, I am syncing up with age group triathletes, Hilary and Tom Williams, thanks to Ironman. Last summer, Tom Williams was competing and racing at Ironman 70.3 Musselman when he suffered a heart attack on the run course right in front of his wife, Hilary. Tom survived to share his story today, thanks to his wife Hilary knowing CPR and several other athletes that came over to help her perform CPR until the emergency vehicles arrived. It is their mission to educate everyone on the life-saving benefits of knowing how to perform CPR, as well as dialing into heart health and all of the advanced screenings you can do and things you need to know as an athlete or anyone out there in the universe, especially as Tom is an emergency medicine physician. Before we dive into our conversation, shout out to our sponsors at UCAN. One of the challenges when it comes to fueling my workouts is finding a fuel source or nutrition that sits well in my stomach. I wanted to try UCAN because I was looking for a product that was easy on my stomach. UCAN is different than other energy products. It has steady release carbs instead of sugar. Fueling with UCAN has truly helped me perform better in all of my workouts. I love fueling with UCAN Edge energy gels during and before my workouts. Plus, they're not as sticky or thick, they taste great, and you don't need to chase them with water. If you're looking for a better way to fuel, give it a try. So Hilary, Tom, it's so wonderful to meet you and to have you here today on the podcast. Thank you for being here at Marnie on the Move.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
We're
thank
so
you for
excited to be here.
thank you for inviting us.
This is so awesome. So last summer, July 2023, we were all up in Geneva, upstate New York in the Finger Lakes, and you and I were racing Ironman 70.3, which is a great race at Musselman. Ironman 70.3 Musselman. It's one of my favorite races. It was super hot. It was a super hot day. It was like you were way ahead of me. I was still on the bike, right, when everything happened. But I remember thinking like we had like another hour until the skies opened up and it started raining. And you were watching. You were on the sidelines. There were hundreds of athletes competing. It's historically an amazing race. But I was out on my bike riding, and I started coming into the run, and I saw and heard all these sirens and helicopters, and I started seeing police cars and ambulances and fire trucks and all kinds of things that were like, oh my God, I hope that person is okay. Like, I hope they didn't crash on their bike. Like, that's what I was thinking, because, you know, at these races, things do happen. And I had no idea what was happening, but I could only imagine in my mind. And here we are today. That was you.
It was, yeah.
So what happened? Walk me through what was going on.
During the run portion of the triathlon, I had an event in which one of the arteries in my heart developed a dissection. And what that is a tear in the artery wall. And it's called a Spontaneus Coronary Artery Dissection. It's, unfortunately for me, very rare. And it happened in one of the blood vessels of my heart. And when that tear occurred, it created a small flap in the artery, and that flap blocked blood flow and essentially gave me a heart attack. And as a result of that whole event, I went into cardiac arrest. And fortunately for me, it was right in front of my wife, Hilary. So she was there, saw it immediately happen, and started CPR. And she was the first person to start CPR. And her and another woman, Brenda, a nurse, or former nurse, if you remember, they started CPR. They were the first people to start CPR, and essentially saved my life, and did CPR until a few other runners were able to stop and also provide CPR until the EMS crew arrived and transported me to the hospital. So
that is amazing. And you're also an emergency medicine physician.
I am.
So
yes.
this is something you know a lot about.
It is, unfortunately, yes. We see this quite often in the ER. So to be on the other side of this event is certainly an eye-opening experience.
Well, I want to say that I do think it is so incredible that all of these athletes, and this is like a testament to our community in the world of Ironman and triathlon, and we're able to help you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that new CPR,
Yeah.
I mean, that's like not something that everybody knows how to do.
Yeah.
So that's pretty incredible. Like,
Well, I got incredibly lucky that 2 of the runners who stopped were also physicians, and the third gentleman was a firefighter, I think, or paramedic.
Something similar.
Yeah, so they all had medical training and were thoughtless enough to, or they cared enough to stop their own races to help me, and that really, speaks to the kind of goodwill that they had and the generosity that they showed to kind of forego their immediate race and just kind of help me. I mean, it was amazing. So.
That's pretty incredible.
We spoke to some of them afterwards, and one was even on track for a PR, and he's still like willing to stop. He had like 30 minutes left of his race, so he was still willing to stop for 10 minutes and give CPR, and then they all finished the race too, which is incredible that they can just jump back in and finish their triathlon.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Did you feel anything strange like leading into that? Like, do you have a history of heart disease, like anything?
No history of heart disease, nothing. As far as what I felt leading up to it, it's hard for me to know. I don't remember anything from the race, to be honest.
Okay.
Hilary can give more information about what I was doing right up to that, but unfortunately for me, my memory of the race is limited to a couple of fragmented memories, and then 48 hours later when I woke up in the ICU. So
you don't remember anything from race day, like the morning, waking up, none of it?
I have one memory, and it's of the first transition, getting onto the bike. I went to change my Garmin lap from the transition to the bike.
Right.
And I hit the lap button too many times, and it stopped the bike and went into transition 2 on my watch. So I remember being very annoyed with myself that
totally
I ruined my timing for the race. So for some reason, my mind remembers that and nothing else. So that's the only memory I have of the day. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's better than feeling awful, right?
Yeah.
And like that week, the week before, like anything? Nothing.
Nothing out of the ordinary. It was this event. It was just a completely sudden, random event. Your episode with Tim O'Donnell. He had a heart attack, and the way he describes it was from buildup of plaque, which is the most common cause of heart attacks, where you just have a gradual development of plaques inside the arteries, and then one causes a blockage. And sometimes people do have pain leading up to that, where they might have early warning signs or things like that. But with something like what I had, it was just a sudden tear in the blood vessel. There's no warning, no trigger. There's nothing that I could have identified as something imminent coming in. So unfortunately for me, it was just a completely random, sudden event.
And has this changed, like as an emergency medicine practitioner, has this changed your approach to looking at people and patients and just yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it gives me a lot of sympathy for people who go through this now.
Yeah.
It's not pleasant waking up, having somebody done chest compressions on you. I mean, my chest hurt for probably a good couple of weeks. And fortunately for me, they didn't break any ribs, but that's a very common occurrence when you do chest compressions on somebody. But the pain was still there. So I definitely have sympathy for anybody who goes through not just that, but the whole hospital process. I mean, I woke up 2 days later not knowing what happened or where I was, and having to have my wife Hilary explain it over and over
again.
Yeah, so that is a very disorienting process and a very difficult transition to your pre-event and post-event life. So I'd certainly have sympathy for anybody who goes through any sort of major medical event.
Yeah. Hilary, tell me what happened as a spectator. Like, what was going on with you?
Sure. So I had my 2.5-year-old with me. So we kind of hung around that start-finish transition area all morning. We saw the swim start, the bike transition. Luckily, there's so many playgrounds in the area, so we kind of bounced around the playground.
Cream.
Yes, yeah. It's a great place for spectators to hang out. So we saw him on the run a couple times, and we were close to the turnaround point. So we saw him at mile 1, and then again at like mile, I could be wrong on these, but like 6.5 or something. In mile 1, he looked great, and he gave us high fives, everything was good. And then when mile 6, he looked a little slow, a little rough, he looked a little tired, but he kind of perked up a little bit when he saw us, gave us high fives. And as soon as he passed by us, my son and I packed up the stroller and started walking towards the finish line. And that's why I was still like cheering for him, go Tom. And then all of a sudden I saw him start walking. I'm like, ooh, that's weird. That's not normal for him to start walking at the end of a race. And then I saw him go into the porta potty and then come out, and I was like, oh, he must be having stomach issues, something. Like, this is not good. So we caught up to him and kind of put his hands on his knees, and I was like, you're doing great. You got to keep going. You got to keep going. Keep going. Come on. And he's like, I don't feel good. And then he laid down. I'm like, no, come on. You got to get up. You got to keep going. And, now I feel really bad about that.
Oh, my God. That's silly.
Just trying to cheer him on. So that's when he laid down and looked very pale and didn't look like himself. And then he kind of went a little limp, and then I thought he was having a seizure. So we put him on his side. Now I know that was myoclonic jerks, which is kind of a common thing with a cardiac arrest. And then this saint of a woman came over and helped me put him back on his back and start chest compressions while I gave rescue breaths and just screamed for help and hoping anybody could come near us to help out. Still a little emotional for me, but we're so lucky and fortunate that those runners stopped and started continued CPR, and so fortunate that the EMS crew and the ambulance was so close, and so that was such a fast response time to bring the AED and have EMS come over, and was able to use the AED on him. So, if this would have happened anywhere else, any other time, it could have been minutes or more that he was able to have service and help, and luckily the ambulance was so close, so that all happened so quickly, which is great. We were so lucky for that. You
are super lucky and so smart to know what to do. Is that just, are you also a doctor?
No, my background is athletic training, sports medicine, so I do have a little bit of that sports medicine background. So I've taken CPR classes, luckily, for the last 20 years of my life. So I kind of knew that early response is key, and just starting chest compressions so quickly can be such a game changer.
I feel like I need to take a CPR class.
Yes.
I feel like everybody should. I don't know. I mean, it's an idea for Ironman to maybe give people $20 off a race or pay for it or something, just so everybody is prepared. I mean, why not, right? Just because you being able to help, it was probably made all the difference. I mean, you basically saved his life.
That's what I tell him. I remind him that all the time. Yes.
Sorry, it's over for you.
We've gone over this a lot already. I owe her my life, and she'll never let me repeat it.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good.
But even for bystanders too, just having a bystander jump in and know what to do, and that early response time is key.
I think it's honestly when I heard your story, and I had simultaneously got an email from someone, I'm a yoga teacher, and they were I'm starting, so I haven't done it, and they were like, oh, you should do a CPR course, and I did one years ago, but I don't remember how to do it. Honestly, I probably wasn't even really paying attention.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's not something I always do.
Right.
But now I'm doing it, and I would totally stop to help someone. So what did you what were some of the signs that you saw that you were like, oh my God, we need to do CPR? You needed help.
I think just seeing him go limp, and he had what I now know as myoclonic jerks, and then he just stopped breathing. And I know him so well that I think I was able to recognize that easier or earlier than other people might have. So just knowing him and knowing how he normally is, he wasn't breathing, and we couldn't find a pulse, and just kind of. And
you did CPR from there.
Yeah, it was very quick.
Yeah, and then you were able to get him breathing again, or you had to wait for?
So he didn't start breathing, or we couldn't find a pulse until he was shocked with the AED. Yeah.
Got it. Yep. It's amazing that you were able to do that. And then, like as an athlete, and I know that all of my listeners are probably thinking this, and I'm 52. It's one of my biggest fears, honestly, to have like a heart attack on the swim, mostly on the swim because I would just drown and no one would find me.
Yeah. It's very scary. Yeah.
No, I'm not. I'm laughing, but it's really it really scares the shit out of me. Even when I was 40 or 38 and started doing this, I was like always my fear. Like I always joke that I'm going to swim with like a little buoy, maybe it inflates based on like some weird thing. But anyway, like it's really scary. It's a really, really scary thought. And it's not just triathletes. It could be runners. It could be anyone. And it, like clearly, like there's some part of this that's in your DNA, and some of it that is just purely nothing out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And so I think like part of the solution is like, what can you do if it is in your DNA? What can you do? Like what kind of tests can you do? What can you, look at and kind of get ahead of it? Since you're a doctor.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is obviously kind of when we look at it from a medical standpoint, there's modifiable risk factors and non-modifiable risk factors. So the modifiable ones are things that you can control, such as diet, exercise, alcohol, smoking, that sort of thing. So, if you are taking stock of your life and trying to assess your risk, you kind of really have to be honest with yourself. And most of the people listening to this podcast are athletes, and they take really good care of their bodies. So, that part may be under their control, and they're doing everything they can. And then there's the non-modifiable risk factors. So age, sex, and genetics are the kind of three biggest parts of that. So, knowing your family history and, talking to family members, sometimes it's, a little touchy subject, or, something that just doesn't come up very often. It's important to kind of ask your family members, hey, what did grandpa or grandma have? What did they die from again? Like, was it a heart attack or a stroke, or, what happened? And then, talk to your primary care doctor and, discuss your personal risk factors, your lifestyle, and, decide what to do from there. So it could be, seeing a cardiologist and getting an EKG, which is just kind of the most basic test when they look at the electrical activity of your heart. Or you can go more advanced, sometimes like a cardiac stress test on a treadmill, or I think you talked about doing the...
I did the calcium scan, the CT calcium scan, which looks at...
I also got one done recently too.
You guys are so young though.
I know, but
but you still...
I was very nervous after his event, and
of course.
Didn't want to.
I think it's important to know what's going on in your body.
No, that's good. And that's all data points, right? And you got to put those together with the help of your doctor, your cardiologist, and kind of come up with your kind of overall risk. And it's going to be different for everybody, obviously, but having that data is helpful for you going long term, knowing what else to do. I mean, sometimes it's medications. Maybe a lot of people are in daily baby aspirin or a statin medication, and those are all things that you should discuss with your doctors. But the first step is making that appointment and getting in to see them, and going through the steps. And sometimes it's a difficult process, and not everybody wants to face those potential risks. But if you know what you're facing, and then you can take steps to modify those. So the most important part is just to, like any race, is just to take that first step, right? Just get in there and go.
And now, I didn't ask you this, but how old are you?
40. I had my 40th birthday in the hospital, actually.
Wow.
Yeah, it was 4 or 5 days.
July 13th?
14th.
14th?
Yeah. So
okay.
it was right before my 40th birthday.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And so like that's 40 is not a typical age for someone to have to go through that. I mean, usually it's, people in their 50s. I don't know, is that true, or
for
having a heart attack? For
a heart attack, it's typically a little bit older. Now we are seeing, the age creep down, as kind of population demographics change.
Right.
But classically, it was people in their 50s and 60s who were the most at risk for heart attacks. For what I have, the coronary artery dissection, the data is a little more spread out because it is such a rare event. So, it's harder to pin down a good age group on that.
Right. Is there anything you could have known? Nothing.
No.
Right? Nothing.
No.
And so are there more, I know Tim mentioned he did another test that was a little bit more advanced than the CT calcium scan.
Mm-hmm. I think he might have had a CT coronary angiogram, a CTCA.
Okay.
I actually had one done as well. It is a different CT study, and it looks at the blood vessels of the heart and gives you an idea of some of the plaque buildup, the densities, and the likelihood of progression. So it gives you a lot more information in a different way than the calcium score does, but they're all useful to kind of gauge your overall risk.
And did you have anything?
No, my coronaries are perfectly clear.
Wow.
Frustratingly. Yeah. Good for me on one side.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
knock on wood.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some signs of a heart attack in women and men that, people could look for, that are the classics that maybe my listeners would be interested in knowing right now?
So the classic symptoms: chest pressure, pain that radiates to your arm, radiates to your jaw, nausea, lightheadedness. Those are kind of the classic symptoms, and unfortunately they apply more commonly to men than women. Women actually present more with non-specific symptoms, discomfort, maybe a little bit of reflux symptoms or burning sensation. They don't often come in with the classic crushing chest pain with radiation to the arm or the jaw, those sorts of things. So it is a little bit harder to identify cardiac events in women than in men. But that being said, you should kind of, if you're worried at all or suspicious, you should go to the hospital, because, we see
never know.
Every shift I see, at least half my patients are there just for chest pain, and almost all of them are perfectly fine, but there's no way to know that going in. So it's always better to get checked out. If you're ever questioning it, or if you have risk factors and you have some chest pain, you should get checked out. You shouldn't finish your Ironman triathlon like Tim did. Yes.
I mean, but a lot of those things are things that you feel anyway, right? When you're racing, you feel nauseous, you feel tired. Yeah. Your arm could be, I sometimes have my fingers or my toes go numb on the bike,
Yeah.
And I'm I'm just keep going.
Yeah.
I just loosen the shoes.
Yeah.
I'm
Exactly.
Whatever.
Yeah. And, when I keep talking about Tim because I listen to that podcast.
But he's someone in our community who has really brought a lot of awareness to this.
Yeah, and I loved your podcast with him. It was really cool to hear his side of the story, and obviously, he and I are very different on an athletic spectrum.
Right.
But we've gone through a similar medical transition. So, I understood what he was going through when he was thinking about finishing that triathlon, because as an athlete, you do want to just kind of keep pushing through. We've all gone through sprains and strains and all those musculoskeletal things that you just push through. You want to get to the finish, you have a good time, and you want to keep going. And I completely get that. But especially with Tim, he had no risk factors, or he had genetic risk factors that he may or may not have known at the time. But it's still important. If you feel those things, if you feel something that your body's telling you something different, if you've done a lot of triathlons and you've never had this sort of pain, especially anything in your chest, you should always get it. Yeah, you should always get it checked out.
Yeah.
The risk is just so high that you don't want to risk being able to do any further activities.
I feel like Musselman is a good race though, because you're never really alone.
Yeah.
There's always people around, and you're really, it's not like you're in the woods remote.
Yeah.
That's really lucky.
Yeah. Well, I've done that race one other time officially, and one other time during the COVID when it was canceled. I still went out and did the route on my own.
Yeah.
So I've been to that area. I love it. We would love to come back and do it again. But it is such a good race because you're almost always within eyesight of some sort of medical professional. You know, the bike course is a great loop, and it's beautiful. The run, just the same. You're always, you know, around some sort of population density. So you know, people
it's
are
a great
always
race.
close by. Yeah, love
I
it.
definitely feel like, you know, after doing all the Ironman races that I've done, when you do other races, you see like Ironman, they're just so on top of it with this kind of stuff and safety. So I never feel like really alone. But yeah, so I think, and it's amazing. And now Hilary, you're doing your first triathlon.
I am.
And
I'm jumping into the triathlon world. I'm so excited. I was signed up for Musselman before COVID. COVID hit. It was canceled. So that was my one sneak into triathlon world. And then I had a baby and kind of took some time off.
So what's your athletic background before Ironman?
So I have a running background. I've been a runner since I was little, but did a lot of ultra races the past like 10 or 15 years or so. So then I had my baby and kind of took some time off of running, and now I'm very excited to get back into it and kind of find my athletic self again.
That's amazing. So what's your first race that you're doing?
So my big race for the year is Lake Placid Ironman, and then I am planning on doing Western Mass 70.3 as well, as a like tune-up and great training race for the full Ironman.
And what inspired you to kind of like get back into triathlon?
Sure. So taking care of a 2.5-year-old takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So with Tom's recovery, he's kind of taken a step back from doing a lot of time-intensive training. So that has allowed me to pick up and train a little bit more, which is great. So he'll take care of the baby a little bit more. And then I had a friend convince me to sign up for Lake Placid Ironman and just kind of go for it. So
wow, that's amazing.
We are training together, and I'm very excited to just get back to doing something for myself too. So
yeah,
I'm excited.
That's awesome. And so are you in a triathlon club, or you have a coach that's helping you along the way?
Yes, so I'm part of T3 with Kevin Crossman, and then Rachel Waller is training me this year, which I'm excited about.
So what's the training like so far? Like, where are you?
I start February 1st, so very close. So we will jump into it.
So what have you been doing in the off season besides being a mom?
Just trying to get more consistent. So definitely getting back into the pool a couple times a week, getting on the trainer a few times a week, and running. Yeah.
And do you like it? Are you having fun?
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah. Very fun.
And so what are some of your goals like with your racing this season?
Just to finish.
Just to finish.
Yes. And just enjoy the process too. It's so many hours. It's such a time commitment that just trying to enjoy it, and because my friend is doing it, spend time with her, and we have 2 kids, and or they have 2 kids, I have a kid, and they play together, and it'll be fun to do training together and try to fit it all in.
Yeah. And so where do you guys live? You live in this climate, right?
So we're upstate New York.
It's cold.
Yep. Glens Falls area, Queensbury, New York.
Oh, cool. So are you going to start running outside now? Like, that's the plan, right?
Yeah.
Have you been? Yeah.
I really enjoy running outside, so I will run all winter, and I cross-country ski, so that'll be a nice cross-training activity too.
Do you have any tips for layering in the winter weather? Like, what are your secrets?
Oh, man. Just find nice base layer, nice windproof jacket, good gloves.
Yeah.
We've found electric hand warmers, which are great.
Ooh, that's cool.
Those are helpful.
That's cool. And Tom, what about you? You on the way back to getting back into the sport of Ironman and triathlon?
I am. At the moment, because of my recovery, I have to kind of limit the level of exertion that I do. So I'm slowly getting back. I can exercise kind of at a moderate intensity now. So I'm just back on the bike trainer and running, and I'm doing all the same kind of activities I was before, just kind of at a lower intensity for the time being.
When did you start training after your heart attack?
It was a slow process. It was difficult to transition back. the easiest part was just walking. We live near a very nice trail system, so we would go out walks together as a first part of the recovery, and then I transitioned back to running and biking. Getting back to running was actually kind of difficult. That was the scariest part for me.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I got back on a bike kind of early. The bike was easy to transition to because I did some cardiac rehab, and you go into a rehab facility, and it's specialized for patients recovering from cardiac issues, and they have these wonderful nurses there who watch over you and are there if anything were to happen. So I can sit on the bike and pedal, and I could do some other activities. But I was actually very nervous to get back running again because there was a block in my mind, or there was just this reluctance to kind of do the same activity that I was doing when I actually had my event. So it actually took me a while. It took me about 4 or 5 weeks to get up the nerve, I guess, to kind of get back running again.
I was going to say, like, how are you doing mentally? Because it's scary.
Yeah, I think the mental challenge was the biggest thing that I went through, the hardest hurdle to get over during this whole process. Right afterwards, there was a lot of anxiety, depression, things I've never really experienced before. We've all had bouts of it from time to time.
Right.
But I had this really prolonged and sustained period where, I was really anxious about things I've never been anxious about before. There was definitely some depression. And it was a lot of work. I saw a therapist. I had to talk to somebody to try to get a way to work these feelings out.
Right.
It was a lot of work. It was a very difficult time, probably for the first 6-8 weeks or so. That was the hardest part. After that, it slowly kind of came back, and I feel mostly back to normal from a mental health standpoint right now. I'm back at work, I'm back exercising, everything kind of seems back to where it was before. Every once in a while, there's some stress or anxiety or depression that kind of slips in. But for the most part, I feel pretty healthy all around now.
Now, are you nervous to race again?
Very much so, yeah.
So am I.
I'm going to ask, yeah.
I can only race when she says I can.
Yes.
So.
This is new. This is great.
But yeah, there's always the concern. Like Hilary, I did a lot of ultra events, and when you're doing those events, you're on your own for hours at a time. So to be on my own now when I'm exercising makes me nervous. There's a lot of things that go through my mind when I think about what would happen if another event happened, and what would happen to my family if that were to happen. So there are a lot of reservations that I have about resuming activities. That being said, it is a big part of my life, and it's something that I do want to pursue again. So I think going forward, it's going to be finding a balance between doing the activities that I want to do and still doing them in a way that's as safe as possible. It may not be completely safe, and there's always going to be risk in whatever we do, but I hope that I can get back to doing a lot of the same events that I used to do while kind of maintaining that safety boundary, I guess.
Yeah. And Hilary, how are you doing mentally?
Yeah, I've kind of gone through the similar things that he has as well. With it was hard. It was very hard and scary in the beginning, and I definitely didn't want him out of my sight for a long time. And unfortunately, he's not a very social runner or biker, so he goes out for long runs by himself, which is terrifying for me, and I think that I'll always have some fear around that. But him and I, we've also talked about how important exercise is to mental health, and that's how you stay healthy, and that's how you get stress out. And so I also think that exercising is so important for our mental health, and that's a huge part of his lifestyle as well. So it's trying to maintain that balance of staying healthy and being smart and protecting yourself and protecting your family too. So
I feel
hard.
like
it's a hard balance to find.
I can't even imagine, and nothing has happened to me. So right now it's not a real thing that has happened to me, but I can't even imagine. When So I just wonder if, I know that like Garmin has like an extra, I don't know what it's called, but you can get this like extra GPS type thing on your watch and it can alert people. Also the Garmin Varia, they're not one of my sponsors. I just like, there's the Varia that goes on the bike. Also,
so we've talked about this as well, and I'm almost scared because I'm afraid he's gonna like have a flat tire and stop for 20 minutes to change a flat tire.
And you're gonna be like,
he stopped. Why did he stop? What's he doing? Like something like that, where I like go into panic and drive there, and then he's like, no, I'm fine. Well, I was just standing here. So
I feel like it like some kind of system.
Yeah.
I have a system. And like I said, nothing has happened. Like I go out on a bike ride. A lot of the time I'm by myself. I'm not by myself. There's cars, there's people. I'm riding my bike on 9W, but I'm not allowed to call my partner unless it's an emergency. Otherwise I text her. But I text her like every, 10 miles. I'm like, if I call her, because I once crashed on my bike and I called her and that was it. Like she's like, you cannot call me. Because if you call me, I think that you are crashed or someone is calling me from your phone.
Yes.
I'm like, here, I share my phone location with her. It's silly, but it's safe. It's safe. You have to be safe. Nothing is going to happen, but you never know.
Yeah.
So.
I usually share where I'm going to go. Like, hey, I'm going to go on this loop today, and
but you do 50-mile loops, and
well, not much anymore, but. Yeah.
50 miles, couple hours.
Yeah. In the future, at least to give an idea of, where I'll be, just so you know where to start looking if I don't show up.
Reassuring.
Yeah. But this isn't even something you can prevent, right? So it is what it is, right? And it's just really scary. Talk to me about the importance of CPR and how it helped you and how important it is for people to know how to do it.
The most important thing about CPR is how soon you start it after somebody collapses, and that's what I benefited most from. That's really what saved my life, is that Hilary was there the moment I collapsed. Any delay in starting CPR will lead to poorer outcomes. So the sooner you can start CPR, the better the outcome will be. And the idea is that you're now pushing on somebody's chest and recreating that blood flow for them to get blood flow back, not just to the heart, but to the brain and to the kidneys and to all the organs that need that blood flow. So the longer you wait, the worse the outcome will be. And the same with defibrillation, so using an AED. So if an AED is around, know how to use it and use it soon, because the sooner you can get that heart back beating, the better outcomes will be as well. So, everybody who's listening, I hope, will do a CPR class.
Yeah,
and
I'm just doing one for sure.
Yeah, and it's really simple. You don't need to go through, an advanced level CPR class, a basic CPR class, just learning how to do chest compressions. The recommendations now for CPR are just hands-only compression. So just get on somebody's chest and start pushing.
But where on their chest?
Yeah, so the location is right in the middle of the chest, just above the sternum, kind of right between the nipples.
Okay.
You just push
above the sternum.
Right on top of the sternum bone there.
Okay.
Yeah, and you just two hands push at a rate of about 100 beats per minute, and you can think about the song "Staying Alive." So you push to that rhythm, and that helps you keep your compressions at the right rate. So if you're thinking about that song,
I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you got that rhythm. So that's how quickly you should be pushing on somebody's chest, and
hard.
And hard, yeah.
So you can break their chest.
Absolutely.
You don't want to, but you can.
Yeah, you don't. Yeah, it's a unfortunate side effect, but it will happen, and it's actually, potentially a sign that you're doing good compressions is that, you might break something. So don't be afraid to push hard, push deep, and push fast. So hard and fast, a rate of 100, staying alive. So you just.
And so what about will you see the person open their eyes and start breathing, or how do you know they're breathing? That could be a stupid question, but I just.
No, so.
It's a good question.
It is something that we see not very frequently, but certainly it's not unheard of, is that people will wake up during CPR. And that's a sign that you're doing excellent CPR. So if they wake up and you stop and they fall back asleep or they stop breathing again, keep doing CPR, because it meant that you were doing whatever you were doing in the first place was working. It just might mean that you continue to do it until medical professionals arrive and take over for you.
And they should be on their back.
Absolutely, yeah. Person should be flat on their back on a firm surface. Try to get them into an area that has a lot of easy accessibility, because hopefully there's more than one person doing CPR. You can absolutely do one person CPR. It's easier if you can get 2 or even 3 people to kind of change out, and it's not as easy as a lot of people may think. It is actually a lot of work when you're pushing on chest, and you'll start sweating. So you want to maintain good compression. So if you can get multiple people cycling in and out.
How long would it take to?
It could take a long time. It could take 10, 15, 20 minutes, and it really, you want to do it until a medical professional shows up. And the longer you can do it, the more chance that the person has of recovering to whatever degree. You just have to be prepared to do it until somebody else can relieve you.
And is there a certain amount of time where it's like it's done, like you can't do it anymore? Like, is it like
that's a tough question. It's very much situation dependent and the underlying cause. So depending on what caused the person to go into cardiac arrest, we'll often make our decisions when to stop based on a lot of factors: age, other medical issues, mechanism of the cardiac arrest, those sorts of things. So there's not a good time that I would tell people to get to this point and then stop. It's very dependent, and I would, if you're a bystander and you're doing CPR, go until somebody else tells you to stop.
Okay. And what about things like salt or smelling salt or things like that? Like, that's just if someone faints. That's
just for kind of people who faint and pass out. I wish it was that easy. I wish we had some kind of
mini, soon Apple will have a little device on the watch and you can just do that to them.
Yeah, they'll have their own defibrillator. Just
come on, Apple, do a defibrillator on the watch.
Yeah.
Get the patent now.
Yeah.
Well, this has been super awesome. Thank you guys so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having us.
This was really fun. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.